Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, FF family. Today is Friday, March 21st, episode 17. Today, it's just me and Bradley. Nick's on vacation with his family.
Right. Yeah, I don't take vacations. I only work.
Yeah, exactly. I thought this was something serious, and you bring along this trash, Bradley. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So, a little bit of a different episode today. One less host. Two, we also don't have a lot of changes in the economy that happened from last week. So we're going to take a little bit different angles, but we do have some updates to go over. So today's about finance history, some slight news, and a few updates. And one of those updates is the investment draft. So before we get into that, once again, my name is Dylan. This is Bradley. And we're here to give you the best advice and freedom. Finances. Now, Bradley, before we get started today, I wanted to kick it off with you. Tell me something good that's going on in your life right now.
Yeah, something good. We got our siding fixed. It costs a crap ton of money, but it was just terrible because it was super windy and the wind was banging the siding against the house next to Carrie's office. So we got it fixed, and it's a lot less stressful because it took weeks to get someone out here, and you could hear it when you were sleeping if it was windy. It was pretty terrible, but feels good. I'm going to have a little bit of a siding high for a couple weeks.
That's good. I'm glad you finally got that handled. Speaking of wind, you're not alone. Over here, it is awful today again. I think we officially reached a fire warning where I live because of how much wind's going on.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's not nice, but okay.
Well, we get them all the time in Colorado, but, it's weird to have them in Springfield, I bet.
Since like the heavy wind started last week, we probably had it every day. It's it's crazy. My highlight that I have going on is actually Final Fantasy V. I've officially finished it. Was on my list for worst of the old Final Fantasies because I have the Pixel remaster. I'm about finished. It's like last boss. I basically beat it, but you gotta level up and stuff. And then I'll just redo it. So it's basically beat. Overall, towards the end, it got really good. I like the villain they introduced. The story was really good. Just took a little longer to get there, in my opinion, but overall it landed really well. So,
all right,
super fun. I'm on to 6, and then I'll finally be able to beat 7. So still haven't done that, so can't wait for that one. All right, so back to the website in general. So we had our investment draft. Our investment drafts each week. We show you an update between Nick and Bradley, where they have challenged each other with $100,000 to invest into the stock market, and the person who's, well, at this point, who's losing the least, whoever does wins the famous grand prize of we don't know yet. So, Bradley, starting us off, you, as of recording this video, you are at $94,706.75. You were down 5.29%. Your biggest winner was BRK-B Berkshire Fund at a positive 10.6%. Your biggest loser, once again, Tesla, down 26.1%. Now, is that 26%? Since we started? Okay, I was like, since last week?
No, that's not since last week, since we started.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's really bad. Okay, so if I recall correctly, I believe these shared the same spots as last week. Is that right?
Exactly. You got it.
Same thoughts. Why is Berkshire winning? Why is Tesla losing? What's going on?
Well, I'm sure everyone everywhere has seen Tesla everywhere. It's like kind of trendy to love it or hate it right now. But I think what's important is that people are afraid of what's going to happen with the revenues of this company. I think probably in a month from now, we'll have some sort of quarterly business report, and we'll be able to see, like, are they selling? We did have a report out that their sales were, I think they were down maybe 10 to 20% in China for the first quarter of what they had so far. And if I'm not mistaken, China's the biggest electric car consumer base in the world. So I think there's a little bit of scares with that. Obviously, there's all the other political news and nonsense with that, with Tesla. So I do think that there's a little bit of people worrying and selling off Tesla. I did look at some numbers. It's down 1.2% over the week. So it had a couple days down, a couple days up, and it ended pretty strong today. I think probably what we'll see in a year from now, unless sales fall off, is that it'll be up, but it's not going to have like the positive 40% years like it's been having. It'll probably be up maybe 5 to 20%. I know that's a huge difference, but I think that's probably what we'll see, like in what 2025 looked like in Tesla in review. The Berkshire Fund is just a great slow growth fund. I mean, 10.6 over 4 or 5 weeks is actually pretty extremely high growth rate, especially when the whole stock market's down. But it's 100%. Just kind of a solid fund to just sit there and let your money grow in.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
One thing I saw in Tesla news is their stockholders sold like $100 million investment, like with them. Do you have headline guy over here?
Yeah.
Don't know if you read into it. Do you know why they would do that? Are they just feeling the pressure themselves? Is this a normal sell-off thing? Because we know like CEOs sell off stock all the time. Is this maybe a mix of like potential bad press they're hearing, or they're scared? What's some ideas you have?
I think it's a mix of everything. And I don't know I don't think I own any Tesla stock like on my own personal portfolio. I know it's in some funds, but like to me, if I wanted to buy Tesla, I would buy it now. It's not like if we're
absolutely.
Yeah, if we're being realistic, it's not like Tesla's like it's the end of the company, but $100 billion is why you see what'd you say? It's $100 billion. That's why you see negative 26%. That's a lot of money and a lot of shares to sell off. Why are they doing it? I think it's fear of what will revenues look like. Bad press, bad politics. What's it going to look like in the quarterly report? Maybe it's down. So that's why.
Like I said, I think it was a couple of weeks back. Unless like Elon Musk quits, throws his own bomb at like a Tesla factory and freaks out, the company's probably not going anywhere. I agree with you. I do find that it'll probably kick back in some degree, but it's
trillions of dollars of equity in the company. So I mean, for it to just go goodbye,
Yeah, but I agree with you. You buy the dip. I think that old saying does work. It really does. Especially like, I don't know if you would like, if you're a day trader, you buy the dip right now, but like a long-term investment plan, probably. But anyway, moving on to Nick. So Nick not being here, you two are the professionals when it comes to this. I'll give you what his scores are so far, and then maybe you have some insight on your end. So first of all, for Nick, he is at a $92,233.10. He is down an unlucky number, 7.77%. So, biggest winner for him, Pfizer, plus 3%. Biggest loser, Amazon, negative 16.67%. I do recall you stating that Pfizer was a bad pick to do. It's his top performer.
Yeah.
And I think you did have the same idea that Amazon wasn't going to be that great. So your choice, why Pfizer's winning, why is Amazon losing?
I think Pfizer just isn't really tied to the growth of the S&P 500 right now, or at least near the top. So I think it's just doing its own thing. Amazon is very much so tied to big American companies, tech companies that have all been struggling. And it's early in the year, so I do think his Amazon stocks will probably, like in a month or two from now, be back at 0%, if not growth. But the S&P got hit so hard that, the biggest of the tech companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Tesla, just got hit the worst, right? People just sold off a lot of their S&P shares, and this is what we see. So, right now we're only a couple percentage, maybe 2.5 percentage points off between Nick and I. I do think eventually, like, that's probably what we're going to see is like a 2.5% difference the whole time. and it could flip the other way with a 5-point change. But why? Looking at Amazon, like what's going on with Amazon? Not a lot, really. Like they have like some Chinese places like Temu and Alibaba. Like the competition is kind of like up and down between the two. Maybe tariffs like are some scares between like Chinese and American companies, especially when Amazon's competing against Chinese companies, but Amazon, a lot of products are probably Chinese made products. So it could just be like some, imbalance in the market, in the share places. But just like I would say with Tesla, probably more so with Amazon, it's more well established than Tesla. It will even out.
That makes sense. Hopefully. We'll see. Just to cap this off, do you feel like Amazon is, with the changes they made to the revenue ideas, processing like Prime, do you find that what their plan strategy is a long-term going to be see a gain, or do you feel like we're just going to see maybe just maybe a plateau for the stock, maybe an increase over time? What do you feel?
What did you say the changes you were referring to?
Yeah. So they had made some changes to like their Prime pricing. That's a tough thing to say really quickly. Okay. Prime pricing plans. And so like that involves like their shipments, some things like their Prime Video. There's rumors they're going to increase cost of that, sort of like with Netflix, any of those. Do you feel like their stock gains are going to just either rebound completely, or do you feel like the stock just might be, of course, they're going to rebound in some way, but slightly and then like plateau? Yeah. What do you feel?
Well, I think what we're learning, and we'll talk about Apple, but that streaming is like extremely expensive. And Amazon has tied like their pricing with streaming, with shipping. So it's probably like, from a consumer standpoint, I don't want to be paying for like free shipping and a streaming service, and I don't want all my prices to go up. From a business standpoint, I do want to split those up and charge customers for Prime pricing and Amazon Prime Video. So I do think if they figure things out, they're going to raise their prices like everyone else, and they're going to break that apart, and it's going to work out better for the company. So to answer your question, yeah, I think it'll be a good thing for the stock price. Bad thing for me and you, if we use Amazon or, streaming's expensive, and we've kind of been spoiled with like a low cost, decent quality product for a while. And I think that like we were like above the companies, the cable companies, and they're trying to balance it back out again.
Yeah, we're just basically going back to cable at this point.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That sucks for sure. We'll see. I think it just becomes where the consumer's breaking point is, right? And then if that breaking point's enough for the Amazons or the Apple TVs, which you're right, why I bring it up, we'll talk about later if they want to keep it around.
Yeah.
If the cost is worth it. All right. So thank you for that, Bradley. Thank you for your insights on the investment draft update. Just to wrap up, you are in the lead a little at 2%, as we mentioned before. You have lost a little bit less than Nick has so far, so congratulations. As we mentioned before, we don't have a lot when it comes to the economy, but we do have some minor updates we're going to go into before we get into our main topic today. So I like to call this our recession update, our inflation radar, whatever you want to call it, through these segments. We do want to talk about it. It is on everyone's minds. Like, is the economy going down the tubes? Should we worry and buy up all the eggs in the world? Because, Bradley, speaking of eggs, we got an update on egg prices. Yeah. That's like the big headline for the economy. So I'm the headline reader. And on the egg prices, I've seen egg prices are going down, but I just went to my local grocery store, and they're about the same price.
Yeah.
Middle Missouri guy here. So what's going on? I thought these egg prices went down. What's going on?
So two things can be true at the same time. Egg prices are going down, and you're paying for the same price of eggs. Hear me out.
Okay.
Egg prices peaked around a little over $8 in early March, late February, early March. However, within like several days, like if you look at the chart, and you can see the chart at Freedom Finances, I kind of went through it. It plummets down within like I think, less than a week. It went from $8+ to $3 within like a week's time. So what that means is the prices drop so quickly that the prices of your eggs at your grocery store, Dylan, your grocery store, Walmart, whatever, probably already paid $8 from the farmers to get those eggs. So they're passing that cost on to you. So you'll be paying $8, $7, whatever the price is, for a week to 3 more weeks. And eventually you'll see the current prices of eggs, which are around $3, as we're recording this, around $3.25 per dozen. You'll see this price early April. And eventually the prices will go down. Now, it's sometimes depending on how elastic things are, and you can argue that eggs are inelastic. You could say that grocery stores take their time at dropping prices. So,
for sure, it's the same way you see with gas prices
right,
at the pump.
Yeah,
it's the same concept.
Eventually, however, the stores will slowly start dropping prices. They'll compete against each other, and it'll happen quickly. So once Walmart or Price Cutters or King Soopers or Kroger or whoever start slowly dropping prices, eventually they're going to have to equalize a little bit. For a commodity like eggs, it's going to drop really quickly. So I would say, if you're listening to this in early April, you should be seeing lower egg prices. Maybe. But yes, they're dropped more than 50%.
So with that being said, one thing I would like to say, just to kind of summarize what you're speaking of, essentially grocery store that I go to, Dylan goes to grocery store A, and I'm seeing these egg prices, even though I'm hearing headlines that, hey, these prices are lowering. Basically what you're saying is grocery store A bought it at this X price already at the shipment probably 2 to 3 weeks ago. They're going through the inventory at that price, so eventually when they get the inventory later on, when the prices that we're seeing are lowering, hence the April timeline, that's the time that I'm going to see the prices of those lowered eggs. Correct?
Precisely.
Perfect.
Well said.
All right. So, anything else on eggs or economy or the inflation in general before we go to part 2 of this?
Yeah, one thing is gasoline prices are dropping pretty quickly, and that's a good thing. I saw some headlines say like gasoline prices are below $3 a gallon. Here's why it's a bad thing. And don't try to trick me, okay? Gasoline prices, higher gasoline prices, just like eggs, gasolines are relatively inelastic. So people with a lower income get impacted more than people with a higher income when gasoline prices go up, whether it's through the market or taxes, right? We don't usually know this, but local economies, usually city, state, and counties, mess with your gas prices through taxes all the time. Like, they bounce up and down whenever there's a revenue need for the local community. Gasoline is always taxed because it's pretty inelastic in the short run. In the long run, places like Tesla come along and they start destroying gasoline, right? But it hurts, the lower income people because they have to buy it to get to work, or they have to take the bus to get to work, right? So whether you're taking the bus, you're using some sort of gasoline, you're driving, you're probably not riding a bike, you're probably not walking, you have to have it. So it hurts lower income. So it's a good thing that gasoline prices are going down. Just the economy between like December and February has been odd. So we're not going to really know how things are looking right now until June or July. And then we'll see like, okay, it was good and we didn't know it, or it was bad and we kind of felt it. But consumers feel like it's bad right now. Headlines make people feel really nervous right now. Things like saying gasoline is below $3. Here's why it's a bad thing can feel scary, but that's a good thing. Don't let them lie to you.
Got it. So thank you for that. Also, going into the next topic, like the part 2, I guess not a completely different one, but part 2 of this recession update. At this point, do you feel like we're on the fast track to a recession? Do you feel like we're basically on the same track? or do you feel like we're just in the green all across the board? Don't worry about it at all. Where are we at?
I don't know what I said last week, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Like the stock market prices, you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, Dylan. Like, it's not like jobs where you feel it, right? It's just like, okay, I look at my 401k and it's this today. In 2 months, it's this number, and I don't even remember what it was. So we put so much focus on it that it seems scary. Jobs are looking okay. We haven't had a new job report for February or March, obviously, yet. I think veteran job report came out for January and saying, or 2024, and veterans were pretty well employed. I think 97%, which means there's 3% unemployment rate for veterans, which is a good thing. And hopefully it comes across all consumers and all those participating in the job market. I would say we'll start to know more once we start to feel things, especially at the grocery store, at the gas station, and what our paychecks are. But I'm cautiously optimistic. It could go either way, though. We could tip down, we could tip up. Who knows?
But basically, I guess to put it in a summary here, haven't changed week over week with your feelings. Because, yes, that was pretty much what you said last week. As well with this, don't panic sell. Be mindful with your spending. Keep your budget. Once again, we have a free budget available tracker for you if you'd like on freedomfinances.org that you can use. Make sure that you stick to it. Don't spend crazy. Correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's only two ways a recession can really impact you. One is inflation, or, the prices of everything. And two is the labor market. So do your best. Like, if you think prices are going way up, really hit down on that budget. If you're not sure about your job, hit down on the budget and start saving. But if you can budget well and you have a job, you're okay. If you don't have a job, then, we got to figure something out, and hopefully the economy can support the labor market, which so far it is kind of now so far.
With I don't know if you've had the time to look into it, headlines here. People are talking and worrying that with all the government layoffs that are happening, it's going to harshly affect the upcoming jobs report for the economy. Do you feel like that's going to be so it's kind of a weird scenario, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like it's planned layoffs, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's not unplanned, but if we're having thousands of people unemployed from the government, if those come through, because also, sorry to tack onto this again.
No, you're good.
You have like judge rulings that are stopping some of the layoffs from going through. It's almost like here's executive orders to like cut off people from their jobs, right? To cut positions. Yeah. Here's just orders from the heads of the departments to cut, and then here's judges coming in saying we can't cut these for whatever reason, right? Let's say that these get cut. Okay. We're in the world where these get cut. Judges don't matter. They're cut. We lost 100,000 jobs, let's say. I don't know where we're at, honestly. There's just so much. Let's say 100,000 jobs lost. The government, we have some form of it running. How does this affect the labor market? How does it affect the recession and interest rates? Where do you feel?
That is a good question I haven't thought about from a couple of perspectives. One, the biggest employer in the United States is the United States government.
United States. Yeah.
So if a bunch of people in the government lose their job, there's a couple ways of looking at that. One is employees are the most expensive thing that a business can have. So if you want to reduce the cost to a business, you reduce, the employer base. That's interesting. I don't know. I think that maybe we'll see it in like the percentages, whether it's like the 4.1 unemployment. Well, the government laid off 100,000 people, so maybe it's 4.3%. And the question is like, how bad is that for the economy? I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't either.
I think we could probably all agree, and I don't mean this in a cruel way for people who are losing their jobs, because I think we can all agree, like, at Freedom Finances, like, labor is the most important thing. Having someone work in the private sector for the economy is better than having someone work in the government. Not in a sense of like a political sense, but like an economic sense, right? It's better to work.
Not in a worth like you as your person,
right,
not your worth as a person. Just if we're looking at raw numbers and how the government runs,
as part
economy specifically,
as a firm, it's better to work for a firm for the overall of the economy than a government entity. So if those people shift over to the private sector, that'll be a good thing. If they never have a job, that would be a bad thing. So that's a good question, Dylan.
I think there's an argument for both. I think this might be something we want to tack on for later. I would love to hear from our new subscribers we've been going through. What are your thoughts? If you know, what you think would happen with the economy on there. I think it's something we should also look into maybe a next episode as well. Maybe like a slight follow-up. See, like, especially if like we get a new jobs market report coming out, see how that affects and make sure we kind of tackle that question a little bit. I think that'd be a good subject to go over.
That's good. Next time there's a job report out that reflects the layoffs in the government, let's look at it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so anything else on inflation, recession, state of the economy that you can think of just with recent news?
So far, inflation, like if you track daily inflation, it's pretty wild to track. It's looking decent to okay. So hopefully March comes back and prices are down, especially grocery prices, gas prices. But not much has changed otherwise.
Makes sense. Okay, now with that out of the way, we're going to the meat and potatoes of the topic today, which is basically economic history, finance history. The topic we want to go over is mainly around tariffs, or tariffs if you're in America. And we kind of mentioned it before in a slight topic, or if you've stayed focused on the Freedom Finance's website, Solo Videos rarely does, and talking about deflation versus inflation. Now, we're going to try to keep this not necessarily like a long download of information by any means. Yeah. So let's try to keep as much conversational as we can for this.
Sure.
And then both topics. So let's see. Let's start with tariffs.
Yeah.
So Bradley.
Yeah.
I'm your average headline reader here. Of course, you know me. I heard, first of all, going into this, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
November elections going on. Donald Trump says we're tariffing everybody 25% across the board. This is how we get the economy back on track. You have economists that are coming out of the woodwork saying this is going to kill our economy. This is how we ruin it in this way and that way. I heard that this is how the economy crashes. So far, if I'm being real Dylan moment for the time, it hasn't changed that much.
No.
We were in a bad position towards the end of the last administration. Kind of still in a bad position overall when it comes to inflation. I haven't really felt it when it comes to products. So, first of all, we've talked about tariffs before, but I guess I want to start this off with, is this the first time we've really handled with tariffs? Yeah. Did even Joe Biden use tariffs? What's going on?
So it's a good question, and one of my tips for anyone who wants to learn about finances or improve their personal finances is just to learn a little bit about economic history. And tariffs are not new, but they are sort of an antiquated idea. So, Dylan, you talked about, like, economists come out and say, this is bad for the economy to have tariffs. Myself, I kind of look at myself as, I'm not an economist, right? But I look at myself of all the study I've done, in financing is more where my area of expertise is. And I would agree, right? Like, a tariff is a tax. Taxes are inflationary. Tax is bad, right? So every time, like, an economist will essentially say the same thing.
Tax equals bad.
Yeah. Like, tax equals bad for money, right? Like, cost. To start with a little history, we didn't have an income tax, not officially at least, till I think it was ratified in the Constitution. Gosh, I'm going to get it wrong. 1916, I think. Fact check me on that, Dylan. But we didn't have income tax ratified in the Constitution until 1916-ish. So before that, like, how did we make money, right? Well, one of the biggest factors the countries made money was through tariffs and taxing countries and sales tax, if you will. What'd you find out with that date?
Oh, I was waiting. I had it ready for you. So for everyone who doesn't know, income taxes is part of the 16th Amendment of the United States Constitution. It allows Congress to levy and collect income taxes. It was ratified February 3rd, 1913.
1913. I knew it when you said the 16th Amendment. I was like, that's where I'm getting 16 from. 1913, whatever. Don't listen to this podcast. I'm an idiot. Anyways.
That's why they listen to me and come for me.
Right.
You got that. Thank you.
So anyways, we had an income tax. And it was ratified in the Constitution. And so revenues came from tariffs, plummet down, and then came from income tax. And it took the government a while to figure out income tax. We saw 46, 50, 60% income tax. And revenues dropped.
Imagine that today.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
From federal income tax, to be clear. Revenues plummeted, but we were on the gold standard. Okay, let me go back to the gold standard for a second. So the gold standard, which we don't have anymore, meant for every dollar in debt, we had to have something to back it up, if you will. So we talked last week or the week before about our debt, which is $36.5 trillion. If we had that
fake number,
right, we would have had to have $36.5 trillion in gold. I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but I don't think that there's that much gold dug out of the ground. I could be wrong, but that's a lot of gold, right?
It could be. It's in California.
So you had to keep the debt down to follow gold a little bit. So sometimes you kind of had to raise taxes, but you had to do it the right way to increase revenue. If you over-raised taxes, it would drop revenue because people would stop working. The people who make a lot of money would work less, etc., right? All the basic economy stuff. So tariffs kind of slowly just started to die out as the gold standard died out, as taxes came in. And it became part of like economics as like economic history. There's always been tariffs here and there. There are some tariffs in the 1920s and the 1930s, which really hurt some growing countries. So if we place it, like, let's say I'm a country, Dylan, and you're a country. If I place a tariff on you, yes, prices slightly go up for me, but it hurts you more than it hurts me, right? That's ultimately how it works. Yep. So, when we do it on poor countries, it hurts them a lot, right? That's why you see, political battles, Trump saying, like, I'm going to put a tariff on Colombia, I think it was. And they're like, I'm sorry, we'll do whatever you want, right?
Look, love or hate him, I even heard this week that he's thinking about putting a tariff on the entire world.
Right.
Like, no matter where you come from, it's like a 25 slap across. I think he's just kind of tired of going back and forth at this point. He's like, I can't keep up with what I'm doing.
Everyone gets 25%. We're done talking about it.
It's like Oprah with the chairs. Everyone just has 25% tariffs ready to go.
Yeah. So usually what you see are smaller tariffs that are part of economic deals between countries. Donald Trump in his first administration had tariffs between Canada and the US, and like they had agreements like if you import a certain amount or export a certain amount, the tariffs go up or down, right? That was common. And then usually it's like tariffs on like steel or aluminum or on
if lumber. I'm not mistaken, but if I'm not mistaken, we go through those I call them like trade updates in my head. Makes that easier.
Yeah.
It's sort of like patch notes with video games, It's like, here's a new, it's sort of like amendments too. Yeah. It's like Constitution. But anyway, so it's sort of like with NAFTA. It's sort of like an updated NAFTA, essentially. Yeah, that's kind of what I look at it.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to think about it. and they negotiate. Just think of, instead of looking at the US and China as two countries, think of it as two businesses. Two suppliers trading supplies back and forth, right? And then one says, I'm going to raise prices, and the other says, I'm going to lower prices, and so forth and so on. These things happen. The difference is the political environment over the last year or so, and pretty big numbers. Like you said, when you hear things of tariffs across the board, it's kind of scary because people tell you, tariff scary, crash, bad, inflation. But it's a much more complex conversation than anyone has. Those who are for it, those who are against it, they never really hit on the complexity of the conversation. So historically, tariffs are way less than they used to be. We have a lot less. We don't rely on tariffs. The idea that economists will say is free trade is good. Lower taxes is good, right? Some things that, in the United States, that's kind of odd is what the corporate tax is, I think, 22% for American companies. If you have a 0% tax on a Chinese corporation, well, then their tax rate is 0, right? So, it's right. Crazy to think about. There was this report in Barron's, I think, that showed that so far we are on pace or above, or China's on pace or above importing U.S. goods for the year so far. So the answer is it's made, net, it's made almost no impact. Some companies have seen impact a bad way. Some have seen it a good way. As a daily consumer, I'm starting to get annoyed of reading about tariffs. I'm slightly interested because I love economics, but I'm also not interested because there's a lot of people who are just scaring us through headline tactics,
So let me throw that at you. So I got a two-parter for this one.
Yeah.
So the first one I want to ask, it sounds like the tariffs recent history. I mentioned about Joe Biden having them. Didn't he place tariffs on the other those countries as well?
Yes, he did. I think they were there was some lumber tariffs on Canada, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong. This is just a guess. I don't remember what they are. And some steel tariffs on China. So yes, they happen.
Oh, and well, I don't know if this is part of it, but with the Ukraine war, I'm pretty sure we I'm going to tariff again.
We tariffed.
I believe we tariffed Russia.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we did.
But I think those were sanctions more so. But are sanctions and tariffs essentially the same thing?
We sanctioned them, we stopped giving them funds. We cut off imports from Russia. And I want to say we tariffed them too. It's kind of like you can tax bad behavior, right? You could tax cigarettes to discourage it. You could tariff it too, which you could replace the word tariff for a tax.
Yeah, and I mean, we still have people smoking cigarettes. So anyway, so if we had them during Joe Biden, so with Trump's first term, does that mean Joe Biden kept the tariffs from Trump?
He did keep some. I think some expired, but yeah, he kept some. I think some he let expire, but yeah, honestly, not a lot has changed. The new tariffs, when you see new 25%, that's what's changed, right? 25% is a pretty high tax rate, a pretty high corporate tax rate, and people are going to have to figure out, companies are going to have to figure out how to work around that. Most of that I shouldn't say most. Some of that gets passed down to the consumers. Some of it, there's actually been a lot of deals between, I want to say Alibaba and Walmart, or some Chinese suppliers in Walmart, where any additional costs have not been passed down to consumers as of yet. They made deals. They said, I'll take 50% of the cost, you take 50% of the cost. And then they're like, hey, don't raise your prices yet, keep it. And I mean, when I say 50%, these are pennies, right? It's you take 50% of this 0.5 penny cost, I'll take 25%, right? So it's pretty small numbers. I mean, when you add them together, they're huge numbers, but yeah.
You go a little farther back with tariffs. Tariffs aren't something new that was introduced within the last 10, 15 years, correct?
Nope, they've been around for hundreds of years.
So I'm sure 100 years ago they weren't talking about increased tariffs and having these major outcries about them, correct?
They were, yeah. I like it's a cyclical process. I mean, in the 1910s, we had war, we had pandemic, we had inflation, we had wage issues, and then we had discussions around tariffs. And
well, none of that's happening right now. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's this cycle, that we go through. One new thing is income taxes happened in 1913. That's when it was ratified to the Constitution. But that's where like tariffs came in. Like, the Democrats of the old day were fighting against the gold standard, and the Republicans were fighting for the gold standard. Like, we can't even really understand what that means today. Like, why would I be for or against the gold standard? Who cares, right? And they're like, so therefore, if you tariff,
do we even have gold anymore? I don't even know.
Like, where's Fort Knox? Anyways, so tariffs kind of came in, taxes kind of came in. The economy was different, but it was the same problems, and it was some of the same rhetoric too, right? Like, oh, the rich are getting away with things. Oh, you're hurting the poor, etc., etc.
I just couldn't help myself but to actually check. So I asked where Fort Knox is, and
well, I know it's in Tennessee.
Okay, well, I didn't. And more so, I wanted to see if we still have gold. And yeah, we actually have 147.3 million ounces of gold bullion, which represents over half the U.S. federal government's gold reserves. And that was as of
that 21. Means we have what, $500 million or $500 billion in gold. If that's just some quick head math.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not enough to cover. Like, imagine if we were on the gold standard. That's not enough to cover our debt.
Yep. Oh, I apologize. It's as of July 2020. As of 21, the U.S. gold reserves totals 8,134 metric tons of gold. So it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Once again, fake numbers. Nothing makes sense. 100 billion, bajillion, $1 dollars. Yeah. We're at right now. It's crazy. Okay, so just to wrap up the tariff conversation, I brought this up to Bradley as a good topic because he was doing his whole Bradley thing, and I fall into it too, where it's like history of these little things and outcomes that happen. And he was looking up, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bradley, but you're looking up just the trends you see today. So you just noticed that there was a pandemic happening, the similarities with war,
Spanish flu,
wage
and COVID,
discrepancies,
World War II,
yeah,
and then the Middle East wars, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just an interesting topic. He was like, hey, this is all happening. I'm like, why don't you put that in perspective for people now? Yeah. He's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So I thought it was cool. Thanks for showing that, Bradley.
Yeah.
We have one more topic, and then we'll go and finish off with some news stuff that's going on in the world, which is deflation versus inflation. So really quickly, first of all, we all pretty much know at this point what inflation is. We get the idea. But deflation, that sounds really great, actually, Bradley. I love when things deflate.
Yeah.
So what's is it the opposite version? Is it good? What is it?
No, I mean, severe deflation, usually you can connect with depression, where inflation you can connect with recession. So they kind of go hand in hand. Deflation, the worry is that like the price of everything will plummet and like our value system won't make sense, right? So the how to think of this is like the price of what you own is not a lot, right? So the best way to survive a deflation is if you have a good paying job, maybe, and which usually you don't when you have deflation, high unemployment, and you're renting and not owning, and you don't own anything. So let's say I buy a house for $500,000, deflation hits, my house is worth nothing, I probably don't have a job. So if I sell my house, I'm $400,000, $500,000 in debt. I could sell my house, but it's only worth $200,000. and like everything is just kind of broken. It's like inflation is like, man, times is tough. Deflation is like Thanos snaps his fingers and the world's gone crazy, if you will. That's the best way to think about
So
it.
it's like the opposite and just like kicked up to times 100 on
Yeah,
the bad
yeah,
scale.
yeah, and it's really where products are so cheap that that money doesn't pay wages. Think about it this way: McDonald's is a huge employer, but if everything is so cheap that McDonald's only pays can only charge 20 cents for a cheeseburger, well, then that's the income coming in. Then they have to fire people, right? Price is so low that we can't hold on to the labor market. It destroys the labor market. That's where things get really bad.
Gotcha. If I remember correctly, there was a story about chickens that you had read about.
Yeah. Well,
Can you bring that up?
so hen prices or egg prices are partly due to avian flu scares, and I want to say over the last year it's been like 150 million hens that have been killed. But prices so if we look at it from this standpoint, egg prices tripled, right? They're $8. So less product, less supply equals a higher price. The pig prices, meat prices were so low in the 1930s. Everything was so low, right? They're trying to battle inflation. This was kind of like throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. 6 million piglets were killed to reduce the supply, thereby increasing the cost of pork, right? Pork, bacon, things like that. So that way it can kind of like boost the economy a little bit. Local governments were throwing around different ideas. I think like Texas and Maine, they were throwing around different ideas of like, let's go pay farmers to burn their crops or to poison their crops to increase prices to kind of get the economy working. Obviously, that doesn't work.
I was like, I don't think that's going to do what they want it to do.
Obviously, that doesn't work. And like, it sounds funny, like almost 100 years ago, but like, they slaughtered 6 million piglets, right? That's just crazy to think about. Like we killed 150 hens, so but we kind of had to in a sense. They did it.
Yeah.
So like, hey, let's see if this works. Kill all your pigs, So that's
Would that just like kill the economy if you don't have anything though? Well, I guess that answered the question earlier, but yes, that's
yeah. That's how deflation is. Prices are so low you can't afford to hire someone, and then I can't hey, awesome, egg prices are a penny per dozen, but I don't have a job to pay for egg prices.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad we're not doing that. I do. I'm glad we've evolved as a society to not just randomly kill our piglets. So, with that being said, everybody, I just wanted to give a little different insight into this. Like I said, with not a lot happening in the local economy, I figured this is a good idea to kind of just gauge ourselves, make sure where we are, specifically here in the United States right now, just because we can relate to it the most. Just rein your expectations and worries in a little bit. Something that we kind of get caught up in headlines and news is this is the first time this is happening into the world. This is unprecedented. Nothing will never recover.
Right.
We're not going to financially recover from this. Nothing has tipped the scales in either direction of a full recovery or a full failure at this point.
Yep.
And I think if I'm speaking as a headline reader myself, I'm not lying when I say this. I talk to Bradley all the time and tells me to calm down. I think it's just manage your expectations, stay focused on your goals, spend wisely, don't sell off.
Yeah.
Invest in the economy still. It's not going away tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you look at the economy after let's say you look at things through the lens of politics or the president. It's pretty much you look at every president, it doesn't matter if there's a D and R or R in front of their name. the economy grows. Sometimes it grows a lot under Democrats. Sometimes it grows a lot under Republicans. We're in the United States. That's kind of cheesy, but like our economy's strong. It almost always grows over a 4-year period.
I mean, we're the richest country in the world. It kind of has to, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just kind of how it works.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, I feel like unironically, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you would unironically know this more than I would. If our economy just crashes, like United States sinks, that kind of means it's like we're the anchor to the world with the economy. And I feel like the world kind of sinks with us. If I look back at '08, I remember the world economy kind of crashing at the same time. Great Depression, our economy crashed, the world crashed. And funny enough, it's like war brought us out of World War II, honestly, because you can equate that to like us doing manufacturing, like tanks and things, right?
We went back to work,
And I remember when like the Ukraine war started happening and we were building like weapons for Ukraine, that was boosting the economy because we were building more jobs for it. So regardless of how you feel about war, it does seem kind of funny where you see that connection again from before and now, how some things kind of don't change over time.
Yep. Well said.
But cool. Thank you for that. I appreciate everyone listening to that. I hope that was a fun experience for there. We have a couple more topics and we're going to wrap up the show. So first off, it's like some businesses you might have heard of. Small independent company DoorDash here. They have introduced a buy now, pay later system. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's under Klarna.
Yes.
Is that right, Bradley?
Yes.
Is who that is? Yeah. First of all, talk to us. First of all, what's the plan with DoorDash? Who is Klarna? And what's the goal? I guess like the end goal, obviously, besides revenue, I guess, of having a hope my credit score doesn't tank from DoorDash is how I'm reading this. So go for it. What do we got?
So let me just put this in perspective. Freedom Finances, one of the first things we put out was like how to like build wealth responsibly, how to build a budget. And we talk about this all the time, like whether it's eating out less or not accumulating debt. DoorDash is apparently now both of those, right? So,
right.
I think if I remember the details, it's like they're going to introduce a pay in 4 installment plans. And people actually, first of all, we already know people struggle with debt and credit card bills. People struggle with these type of things and putting things on payment. People lately, especially since 2000 and COVID, struggle with DoorDash or Uber Eats or Grubhub or whatever, right? People like spend a lot of money. And you probably know, it costs, sometimes restaurants just raise money or raise the cost of the product just to deliver. But that also includes, but that doesn't include delivery fee and then tip and then like the DoorDash fee. So, a meal that could be $12 at McDonald's is often $25. And then, you add on a couple more things for 3 or 4 people. That's a $50 meal that's now $80. You're like, well, I mean, like, hey, this is food. Don't worry about it. Pay this $50 over 4 $20 installments. Man, if I'm you, do not do this. Do not.
I guess my first question is, how do you accumulate so much debt with DoorDash to have to do this? Is it literally people I guess I'm not understanding like the need that people would have for this. Now, don't get me wrong. Some irresponsible people that spend thousands of dollars in short periods of time at DoorDash.
Sure.
I know them.
Yep.
But I guess, is it for those people? Like, who's this for? Why?
I personally think, and I usually don't talk like this, but I personally think it's kind of predatory, I think that it's there to accumulate revenue in the long run, but to get people to feel more comfortable, because I think that DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, everyone kind of knows it's expensive and the costs have kind of gotten out of control where people have slowed down a little bit. This is a way to reduce that initial cost. Overall, I mean, like if you can afford it and you make hundreds of $1,000s a year, go for it, whatever, right? But if you're normal people like Dylan and me, don't touch this once. Don't put your DoorDash on a credit card.
I'm honestly baffled by this. Like, yes, that's, I would usually say this more than you. I find this predatory to low income people.
Yeah.
Because I read on here.
Yeah.
It's like an 8.5% interest rate on this is what it can hit up to. What the hell are we doing? Yeah. So my goal is I'm going to spend, like, each week I'm going to buy McDonald's. It's already going to cost me at least $20 to do this dash with.
Yeah.
So 4 weeks, $20. That's $80. We're going to slap on $8.50 onto this. What are we doing? This is just
listen,
capitalism's gone too crazy. I'm done. I'm checked out. I'm done.
Listen,
I'm done.
We can send this nonsense by not participating in it. Say, no, we don't want this. Do not I mean, listen, if you want to do it, do whatever you want. But, like, if you want to be strong with your personal finances, like, this is not a healthy way to build wealth, to build personal finances, to build
literally and metaphorically. Freedom. It's not healthy to do this.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. We know McDonald's prices have gone up. McDonald's prices through DoorDash have gone up, plus the DoorDash fees, plus interest. You're paying probably the equivalent for, I don't know how much is McDonald's cheeseburger, like $2.29. In the end, something like that, yeah. You'll probably pay $6 for that cheeseburger with all this, which is just crazy. I mean, for me, a $6 cheeseburger, like, I eat one of those and I'm good, right? No.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's my whole spiel. I'll stop ranting.
I mean, if you don't, I will. I'm going to keep going. It's like a $5 shake. I don't know if it's worth $5, but it's a damn good $5 shake.
I think about that, and I'm like, man, a $5 shake today? That's not too bad.
Yeah, well, actually, you're right. For everyone who got that reference, you're welcome. It's his best movie.
Yeah.
Second on the list we got is another unknown company, Apple. They have lost over $1 billion. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Over $1 billion in revenue this year on Apple TV Plus. I heard something on this. It was off the heels of, I think it's the show Succession. I think is what it is. No, that's the HBO show. It's the one where they Severance. Yes. Severance was like the most watched show of the time at that point, and they had like the revenue meeting. They're like, "Yeah, we're actually losing." It's what? So I guess two parts to this is, how do you feel like, we kind of touched on it earlier, which is why I brought it up. But with Amazon and the streaming service world, people have talked about the decline of the streaming services recently, especially since, like, unironically, since post-COVID, like heavy hitting COVID, where people are just seeing prices raise and raise.
Yeah.
Are we going to see that, like, stop anytime soon? And do you see, like, either some of these, if not the majority of these services, dwindle, if not, or all stay? Where are you feeling with this?
I think like a mix of everything you said. I think that prices will eventually hit a high point where people will stop buying, right? Eventually, if everything's $15 to $20, then it's going to be like $300 for your subscriptions. Eventually, people will drop off some of those, right? So some of them will drop their prices. I do think, not like there can't be Peacock, Paramount, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Hulu. What else am I missing? There's
HBO Max.
HBO Max, yeah. Like, that's 7 just off. And then there's, like, the more niche style services, like for anime or horror movies or classic movies. They can't all be super successful, and we already know streaming is so crazy expensive. To think that they're losing $1 billion a year, you might ask, why is Apple doing this? Well, there's something called the Apple ecosystem, which I am currently fully integrated with. I'm using my iPhone.
If anyone knows him,
my MacBook.
We know.
Yeah, I'm fully in the ecosystem, right? I have my Apple Watch. I have my iPad. I'm all in, right? And like,
What are you
hey,
listening to music on,
yeah,
Bradley?
I listen to Apple Music. I
Got your
I
Apple
I
credit
asked
card?
Carrie. I asked Carrie, I'm like, why would anyone use Spotify? I literally asked that a couple weeks ago. I'm like, why not just use Apple Music? So Apple TV, like, yeah, we're losing $1 billion a year, but do you have an Apple TV subscription, Dylan?
No, I
No.
have two subscriptions total in my life, and I guess three. But like, I don't have any streaming services. I have Hulu and Disney Plus because it's
Sure.
part of my
Yeah.
Verizon plan.
Yeah.
But external, I pay for PlayStation and Final Fantasy
Yeah.
and Spotify. That's what I have.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea is like to get someone like you, Dylan, like, hey, Severance is a good show. Come watch the show, And then like to get to
Whoa.
like integrate you into this platform. And does it like think of it almost as advertising? It costs $1 billion a year, $1 billion a year to integrate people into the platform. Is that worth it? I don't know. I haven't really fully looked at it, but I have a feeling that Apple's doing all right. So, yeah, streaming is so expensive, but it brings in revenues in crazy ways.
Yeah, I was gonna say it reminds me of, unironically speaking, of PlayStation or even Xbox, for
Mm-hmm.
example. I don't know. I don't know if it's the same with Nintendo, but I'm pretty sure it would be. If anyone doesn't know with like video game consoles, they lose money on consoles.
Yeah,
Every console they sell, they lose money.
yeah,
The point is to get you onto Xbox Game Pass for Xbox, having a just a subscription service to have games for free for
mm-hmm.
you. They sell the video games at a higher rate to get that revenue back. This to me, with Apple TV, yes, of course, the bonus is to get you to pay a subscription to Apple TV. That's a bonus on top of it. But it seems like we'll get you in with Apple TV so that way you can watch it on your Apple TV
Yeah,
and then your
yeah.
Apple iPhone
Oh, I
and then
also
your
have an
Apple
Apple
whatever.
TV. Sorry, to add to my
Yeah,
list of things.
we got that. We didn't you didn't have to tell us. We got it. Does Apple have a credit card?
I think they do. I don't have that.
You know they do.
I
You know
don't
they
have
do.
that.
Let's be honest. Okay, there's the one. Out of the 50 products, he's got 49 of them. But yeah, I wouldn't surprise me. But any other credit card he has in his Apple Wallet, by the way. But anyway, in a real note, that just means to me the same thing. It's let's bring you in
Yeah.
now, and then the ecosystem's part of that. With like, if you're into video games, that's what it is. But that's unironically why they don't prefer physical media.
Yep.
They want you in that digital ecosystem because it's more likely for you to keep a subscription.
Yeah.
Not getting me with that. Anyway,
I'm with you, brother.
Hell yeah, we got the 4K disc. You know what it is. As I pay for PlayStation. Anyway, so last topic we have today is the Federal Reserve has paused interest rate changes. If I'm not mistaken, one, yes, obviously they paused, but two, they've also not changed any of this go around, if that's correct.
Yeah.
And with this meaning they paused it. So I know they've been kind of going quarterly with interest rate changes. Is that correct?
Not not necessarily.
Okay. Well, then talk about when do these have like these interest rate changes been occurring? How frequently over the past year have they been occurring?
Yeah.
What have we seen? What's going to happen in the future?
So just to go over the last couple years, in 2021 and 2022, inflation was sky high, like 8, 9, 10%. And the Federal Reserve increases interest rates to discourage spending, to discourage loans, and the lower the demand, prices go down. So that's why interest rates were so high. So last year, inflation started to cool quite a bit, and the job market started to cool in a negative way. So they're like, okay, we want to encourage economic activity. So they dropped rates by, I think, 0.5%, and then they dropped them by either another 0.5 or 25%, back to back over 2 months. I think one was in September, one was October or November. And they've had 2 or 3 meetings since then where the team goes over interest rates, the state of the economy, and I think the labor market is like relatively steady. We're unsure about inflation, so they said we're not going to do anything right now. Like if you think about the Federal Reserve, it's the U.S. central bank. If you could have one job for them, it's to control inflation. So right now, they're not going to increase rates because inflation isn't high enough. That could hurt the economy and the job market. They're not going to drop it because they don't want to encourage too much spending to increase inflation. So right now, it's kind of like, let's hold steady and see where everything's at in our next meeting. I don't have the date of their next meeting. It's usually 1 to 2 months out. And I think they said they project 2 more rate cuts for the end of the year. So they project decent economy, maybe some inflation. We'll see. So it's right now it's a decent thing because the economy, like if we're being just super honest, the economy is extremely strong. It's just not extremely strong to our normal standards over the last few years. So it's a good thing that we're kind of like slowing things down. Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, is he's pretty cautious, but he's been taking like the same line as all the other Federal Reserve chairs of like, I'm going to get inflation, and their goal is 2%, not above, not below. They want a 2% inflation goal. I think right now we're at 3.1 for a 12-year period, so they're going to pause it. If it keeps going down, they will decrease rates.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's pretty much speaks for itself with the interest rates. We do have constant updates when it comes to those on our X page and our other social media. You can find our link tree, and obviously as well on freedomfinances.org. Now, Bradley, before we go, do you have any other topics you'd like to discuss? Anything that's on your mind before we end today's show?
Just to go back to like some of the more the topics that we can all relate to, like DoorDash or Apple TV Plus, and like that's like the at the heart of freedom finances. So like you don't build a healthy budget or healthy wealth by DoorDashing often, right? You especially don't do it by putting DoorDash on a credit card, right? So if you're trying to like, how do I get out of debt, or how do I I want to level up my life? Well, don't listen, nothing against DoorDash. I don't know who these people are. I don't know who Klarna is or whatever they're called. Don't do it for yourself, right? Like take care of yourself first. And there's no reason to pay $30, $40 for McDonald's when you could go there and pay $12 or make your food at home. Live your life, but if you're trying to build your wealth, if you're trying to be responsible, control yourself and your subscriptions and your DoorDash. People already have, isn't there like a DoorDash subscription service?
Yeah, they all have it. Yeah. Dash Plus, Door Plus, Dash, they all have them.
Get rid of those. DoorDash less. Don't do buy now, pay later.
Like, if you're doing DoorDash Plus, you have to be a business. I could see that.
Right, yeah. Maybe it works for your lifestyle in a certain way, but yeah. Don't put your DoorDash on a credit card.
Yeah, that's just, I'm sorry. That's just so depressing to hear from me. Yeah. When you put that on there, I was like, what are you talking about? I thought you were kidding. Nope. Yeah, I looked it up before the show. That happened. Yep. Yeah. Okay, well, for me, I don't have any more questions on there. I think we hit a lot of things. Like I said, I wanted today to be more of our conversation piece like we always are, even though we're going over kind of some history of things. Like I said, I think for me that even, I'll be honest, Bradley's helped with, which is stay calm. Things that are happening aren't new, for one. Two, the world/economy is not crumbling yet. And when it does, the good news is freedomfinances.org will keep you in the loop, as always, with all the information you need. Everybody, I want to thank you for joining today. Have a great day, afternoon, and evening. Thank you, FF family, for being part of this, and we'll see you next time. Peace.